The night was heavy with silence, but my heart was racing too loud to ignore. Every creak of the wooden floor, every faint rustle of the curtains, felt like it could betray me. I wasn't supposed to be awake. I wasn't supposed to hear what I heard. My sister's voice, low and sharp, cut through the walls as she whispered on the phone. At first, I thought she was talking about someone else, but then my name slipped from her lips, and suddenly my blood turned cold. She spoke of me like I was nothing more than a problem to get rid of, a burden she had been waiting to throw away. Her tone wasn't the voice of the sister I grew up with, but something darker, something that chilled me straight to the bone. I pressed my ear closer to the door, and the more I listened, the worse it got. She was making plans for me. Plans that I was never supposed to know. My mind spun with questions. Why would she do this? What had I ever done to deserve it? But the truth didn't matter anymore. What mattered was survival. If I stayed, I knew something bad would happen. I looked around the small room she had given me, every corner suddenly feeling like a cage. My only thought was to get out no matter what. I couldn't wait until morning. I couldn't risk another second under her roof. My sister's house was no longer a safe place. It was a trap, and I had stumbled right into it. And so, barefoot and trembling, I made the choice that would change everything. I had to escape that very night before it was too late. The first time I stepped into my sister's house, I felt like I was stepping into a different world. The place smelled faintly of lavender, her favorite fragrance, and the air was warm from the old fireplace that sat quietly in the corner of the living room. After everything I had been through, it felt almost unreal to be welcomed into a space that promised comfort. My sister Maria opened the door with that smile of hers that always seemed a little too bright, almost rehearsed, but I ignored the odd feeling. I was exhausted, carrying the weight of too many bad days behind me, and in that moment, I wanted to believe she meant well. She hugged me tightly, and though her arms felt stiff, I told myself it was because she wasn't used to me staying with her. I convinced myself that family was family, and family could be trusted. She had invited me after I lost my job and my small apartment. "Come stay with me until you get back on your feet," she had said on the phone, her voice carrying a sweetness I hadn't heard in years. We had grown apart after childhood, not out of anger but because life had pushed us in different directions. I thought maybe this was life's way of bringing us closer again. I held on to that hope as I unpacked my small suitcase in the guest room she had prepared for me. The room was neat, too neat, with plain white walls and a single framed picture of flowers on the wall. It felt less like a guest room and more like a waiting room, but again I ignored it. After all, I had a bed to sleep in, and I didn't have to worry about tomorrow's rent. That, I thought, was enough. The first few days passed in a blur. Maria seemed kind enough, though she was unusually watchful. Every morning she would ask where I was going, when I'd be back, and who I was meeting. At first, I thought it was her way of caring, of making sure I was safe. But the more it happened, the more it felt like she wanted control rather than connection. I noticed her watching me during dinner. Her eyes sharp even when her lips were curved into a smile. Sometimes she asked questions that didn't feel like questions but like traps. Small things like whether I had money saved or what I planned to do with my life. When I gave vague answers, her smile would tighten, and she would quickly change the subject. Still, I tried to push away my unease. She was giving me shelter when no one else had. I reminded myself of that every time doubt tried to sneak in. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that maybe the stress of the past months had made me suspicious of everyone. I wanted to believe that my sister cared. I wanted to believe that blood meant loyalty. But then came the night that shattered everything. It was past midnight, and the house was cloaked in silence. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The day had been heavy with an unspoken tension I couldn't quite name. Maria had been unusually quiet during dinner, her eyes distant, her fork moving slowly across her plate. Something about her unsettled me, but I tried to let it go. Sleep, however, refused to come. I shifted on the bed, listening to the ticking of the old clock on the nightstand, when a sound drifted through the thin walls. At first, I thought it was the television, but then I realized it was her voice. Low, hushed, deliberate. Curiosity pulled me out of bed. Barefoot, I crept toward the door and pressed my ear against the wood. My heart beat faster as her words grew clearer. She was on the phone, speaking in a tone I had never heard from her before. Cold, sharp, and calculated. My breath caught when I heard my own name slip from her lips. I froze, straining to catch every word. "She won't be here long," she whispered, her voice edged with certainty. "I can't keep her around. She's draining me. Tomorrow night it will be done." I felt my stomach twist, my skin prickle. At first I thought I had misheard. Maybe she was talking about someone else. Maybe this was just a misunderstanding. But the longer I listened, the clearer it became. She was talking about me. She spoke of me not as a sister, not as someone she cared for, but as a problem she had to get rid of. Each word was like a knife, cutting away the fragile trust one had been clinging to since I arrived. "She has no idea," Maria continued. "It's better this way. She's too naive to see it coming." I stumbled back from the door, my breath shallow and uneven. My hands trembled, and my heart pounded so loudly I was afraid she would hear it through the walls. 1,000 thoughts swirled through my head. Why would she do this? What could I possibly have done to make her see me as some kind of obstacle? I wanted answers, but the fear twisting in my chest told me the truth didn't matter. What mattered was survival. If I stayed in that house, if I waited until tomorrow night, I might not have the chance to leave at all. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind racing. The room that had once felt like a safe haven now felt like a trap. Every corner, every shadow seemed to press in on me, whispering that I had to move, that I had to escape before it was too late. My sister's kindness had been a mask, and I had fallen for it. Now the mask had slipped, and I had seen the darkness beneath. I thought about confronting her, about demanding to know why, but the idea vanished as quickly as it came. Confrontation would mean exposure, and exposure would mean danger. No, I had only one option. I had to leave, and I had to leave that very night. I reached for my small suitcase and opened it as quietly as I could. My hands shook as I shoved in a few clothes, my phone charger, and the small stash of cash I had managed to save. I didn't have much, but I couldn't afford to be picky. Every second counted. I grabbed my scarf and shoes, though I didn't dare put them on yet for fear of making noise. Paused, listening. The house was silent again. Maybe she had ended the call. Maybe she was walking through the hallway at this very moment. My skin crawled at the thought, but I forced myself to keep moving. The doorknob felt cold under my hand as I twisted it slowly, carefully. The hallway stretched ahead, dim and quiet, the shadows swallowing the walls. Every step I took felt like walking on broken glass, every creak of the floorboards like a gunshot in the silence. I held my breath as I passed her room, terrified the door would swing open and she would be standing there, her smile gone, her eyes sharp and knowing. But the door stayed shut, and I kept walking, my legs trembling beneath me. When I reached the front door, I hesitated. My hand hovered over the lock, my mind screaming with doubt. What if I was wrong? What if she hadn't meant what I thought she meant? What if leaving meant abandoning the only place I had left to go? For a moment I almost turned back. But then her words echoed in my head. "Tomorrow night it will be done." That was enough to silence every doubt. I couldn't risk waiting. I couldn't risk trusting her again. With shaking hands, I turned the lock and pulled the door open. The night air hit me, cold and sharp, filling my lungs with freedom and fear all at once. The world outside was dark and empty, but it was better than the walls that had nearly become my prison. I slipped out, closing the door softly behind me, and for the first time in days I felt alive. My bare feet touched the cold pavement as I ran down the street, my bag clutched tightly to my chest. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for certain. I had escaped, and I would never step back into that house again. The night swallowed me as I ran farther from my sister's house, the sound of my hurried breaths echoing in my ears. The street was empty, lined with dark houses where everyone else seemed peacefully asleep, unaware of the storm unraveling in my life. My bare feet slapped against the cold pavement, each step sharp and painful, but I didn't stop. Pain was nothing compared to fear. I clutched my bag tightly against my chest, terrified that at any moment I would hear her voice behind me, calling me back, or worse, feel her hand grip my shoulder. But the only sound was the wind pushing against the trees and the occasional barking of a faraway dog. The silence should have been comforting, but it felt heavy, as though the world itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. I didn't have a plan. I only knew that I had to get as far away as possible. My first thought was the bus station, the one I had passed on the way into town. It was miles away, but it was the only place that offered escape. I kept moving, glancing back every few minutes, half expecting to see her car headlights blazing after me. Every shadow looked like a threat, every rustle in the bushes like her footsteps closing in. My body ached, my legs begged me to stop, but fear gave me strength I didn't know I had. By the time I reached the outskirts of town, my chest burned and sweat clung to my skin despite the cold night. The bus station came into view at last, a squat building with flickering lights that buzzed faintly in the darkness. It wasn't much, but to me it was salvation. I hurried inside, the warmth of the building wrapping around me as I pushed open the glass door. A single tired-looking clerk sat behind the counter, flipping through a magazine, and an old janitor mopped the floor lazily near the entrance. The place was almost empty, just a man asleep on one of the benches with his hat pulled over his face. I approached the counter, trying to steady my breathing, trying to look normal. The clerk looked up at me with half-closed eyes and asked, "Where to?" "Anywhere," I thought. "Anywhere but here." My mouth felt dry, but I forced out the words. "What's the soonest bus leaving tonight?" He tapped at the computer for a moment and then said, "There's one leaving in 40 minutes. Heading east. Final stop is the city." Relief rushed through me. The city. It was big, crowded, full of strangers. The perfect place to disappear. "One ticket, please," I said, pulling out the crumpled bills I had stuffed into my bag. My hands trembled as I passed the money across the counter, afraid that somehow he would see through me, see the fear I was trying to hide. With the ticket in hand, I chose a seat near the corner of the waiting area, my back pressed to the wall so I could see everyone who entered. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to calm the shaking that wouldn't stop. My mind replayed her words over and over. "Tomorrow night it will be done." I didn't know what she meant exactly, but the cold certainty in her voice left no room for doubt. She had been planning something and I had been her target. The thought made my stomach churn. As I sat there, my phone buzzed in my bag. My heart lurched, and for a moment I didn't want to look. But curiosity and dread pushed me to check. Dozens of missed calls. All from Maria. My blood went cold. She knew. She must have gone to my room, found me missing, and now she was trying to reel me back. The phone buzzed again, a new message lighting up the screen. "Where are you? Come back. We need to talk." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. Ugh. After what I had heard. After the way she spoke about me like I was disposable. Well, this wasn't concern. This was her trying to lure me back, to keep me from slipping out of her control. I turned the phone off completely and shoved it deep into my bag. Whatever she wanted, I didn't need to hear it. The minutes dragged like hours. Every time the glass doors opened, I flinched, terrified she would come storming in. Her face twisted with anger, demanding I return home. But each time it was only strangers. An old woman carrying 2 shopping bags, a man in a heavy coat, a pair of teenagers laughing too loudly. I kept my eyes on the door, my muscles tense, ready to run if I had to. Finally, the bus arrived, its headlights cutting through the night as it pulled into the station. I stood quickly, clutching my bag, my whole body buzzing with nervous energy. The driver stepped down, barely glancing at the few of us waiting. When the clerk called for boarding, I nearly ran to the bus, handing over my ticket with a shaking hand. The driver barely looked at me as I climbed aboard. Inside, the bus smelled faintly of gasoline and stale air. I chose a seat near the back, away from the few other passengers. The cushions were worn and the window was smudged, but to me it was a throne of freedom. As the engine rumbled to life and the bus pulled away from the station, I finally let out the breath I had been holding. For the first time since leaving her house, I felt like maybe I had escaped. The town disappeared behind me, swallowed by the darkness, and I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to rest. I thought about Maria, about the sister who had once braided my hair, who had shared secrets with me under the covers as children, who had promised she would always be there for me. How had that girl turned into the woman whose voice dripped with cold intent, planning something I couldn't even fully understand? I searched my memory for clues, signs I might have missed, but the answers slipped away like smoke. The town disappeared behind me, swallowed by the darkness, and I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to rest. I thought about Maria, about the sister who had once braided my hair, who had shared secrets with me under the covers as children, who had promised she would always be there for me. How had that girl turned into the woman whose voice dripped with cold intent, planning something I couldn't even fully understand? I searched my memory for clues, signs I might have missed, but the answers slipped away like smoke. Sleep came in restless fragments, haunted by dreams of her face looming over me, her voice whispering promises of tomorrow being my last. I woke with a start each time the bus slowed or the brakes hissed. By the time the first light of dawn broke across the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold, I felt like I had aged years overnight. The city greeted me with noise and chaos, honking horns, rushing cars, people spilling across sidewalks like waves. I stepped off the bus, my bag heavy in my hand, and for a moment I just stood there, overwhelmed. The buildings towered above me, and the crowd moved so quickly it was easy to feel invisible. That was what I needed. To disappear. To blend in so completely that Maria would never find me, no matter how hard she looked. But as I walked deeper into the city, the reality of my situation pressed down on me. I had no job, no real plan, and only a little money. Freedom was mine, yes, but freedom without stability was fragile. I needed to figure out where to go, what to do next, before exhaustion and hunger caught up to me. I found a small cafe on a corner, the smell of fresh bread drifting into the street, and stepped inside. The warmth and chatter were a strange comfort after the long, cold night. I bought the cheapest coffee and sat at a corner table, watching strangers come and go. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the weight of what had happened. My own sister had plotted against me. My own blood had wanted me gone. The betrayal cut deeper than I could explain. Sitting there, staring into the steam rising from my cup, I realized that I couldn't just run aimlessly. If she had plans for me, then I needed plans of my own. She thought I was naive, too blind to see the truth. But she was wrong. I had seen it now, and I would not let her destroy me. A new fire stirred inside me, quiet but strong. I wasn't just running anymore. I was surviving. And survival meant more than escape. It meant outsmarting her, staying one step ahead, and never letting her catch me again. The city was louder than anything I had ever known, and as the hours passed, I began to feel the exhaustion of my escape pressing down on me. My body begged for sleep, but fear and adrenaline kept me moving. I spent that first day drifting from street to street, clinging to the hope that in the chaos of the city, I could vanish into the crowd. Yet every corner I turned, every face I passed, carried with it a lingering question. What if she was here? What if Maria had already realized where I might go and was searching for me? The thought never left me, like a shadow trailing just out of sight. By late afternoon, I found myself sitting on a park bench, my small bag tucked close to me, watching children run through the grass while their parents laughed and called after them. It was a strange sight. So much life, so much innocence, and I felt like a ghost among them, weighed down by secrets too dark to share. My stomach growled with hunger, and though the coffee from earlier had kept me going, I knew I needed more. I pulled out my wallet and counted what little cash I had left, the thin bills a cruel reminder of how fragile my freedom was. I could afford maybe 2 more days of food if I was careful, but that was all. The city was big, but without money it would shrink fast, and every option would close in on me. As evening fell, The sky dimming to a deep orange glow, I wandered into a quieter part of town. The streets here were older, the buildings lined with peeling paint and faded signs. My feet ached, and I knew I needed a place to sleep. I thought about cheap motels, but even one night would eat away too much of my money. Instead, I walked until I found a small, nearly empty library. The fluorescent lights hummed, and the smell of old books wrapped around me like a blanket. It wasn't home, but it felt safer than the streets. I curled up in one of the back corners, pretending to read while my eyelids grew heavy. For a few hours, I let myself drift in and out of uneasy sleep, my head resting against the spine of a thick book I hadn't even opened. But dreams came quickly, and they were not kind. I dreamed of Maria standing at the foot of my bed, her smile sharp and unrecognizable, whispering that I could never escape her. I woke with a start, heart pounding, sweat dampening my forehead. The library was still, the few late-night visitors lost in their own quiet worlds, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was close, that somehow she was watching. By the second morning, I realized that surviving the city was going to take more than hiding. I needed a plan, something solid that would keep me moving forward. Sitting on a bench outside a small cafe, I pulled out my phone, hesitated, then turned it on. The screen lit up and my stomach dropped. Dozens of new messages flooded in, all from her. Some were desperate, "Please just come home. I'm worried about you." Others were colder, harsher. "You think you can run from me? Don't be foolish." The words sent chills through me. She knew. She wasn't just trying to bring me back with soft words. She was also reminding me of her control, her certainty that no matter where I went, she would find me. My finger hovered over the block button, but I stopped. If I cut her off completely, I'd never know how close she was. Reluctantly, I left the phone on, though I kept it on silent. That day I tried looking for work, but it was nearly impossible. Every shop I entered looked at me with suspicion when I stumbled over my words, when I couldn't provide a local address, when my answers sounded too uncertain. I left each place feeling smaller, more invisible, until my hope began to crumble. By afternoon, I returned to the library, my only safe place, but as I sat down, my phone buzzed with a new message. My chest tightened as I read it. "I know where you are." My breath caught, my eyes darting around the room, scanning the faces near me. Was she here? Watching me from the corner? My pulse thundered in my ears as I shoved the phone back into my bag and hurried out the door, the air outside hitting me like a slap. Panic surged through me, and I walked quickly, turning down streets at random, desperate to lose whatever unseen presence was closing in on me. That night, I didn't dare sleep in the library. I found an alley near a cluster of shops, hidden enough that no one would notice me, and tried to rest there, my bag serving as a pillow, the cold cement pressing into my back. The noises of the city, sirens, footsteps, distant shouting, kept me awake, but exhaustion finally pulled me under. When I woke at dawn, stiff and aching, I knew I couldn't live like this for long. If Maria didn't find me, hunger or exhaustion would. I needed help, but I didn't know who to trust. The thought of reaching out to an old friend crossed my mind. But what if Maria had already contacted them? What if I led her right to me? By the third day, I felt like I was unraveling. Every stranger's face looked suspicious. Every car that slowed near me felt like it belonged to her. I caught myself glancing over my shoulder every few minutes, my nerves stretched to breaking. When my phone buzzed again, I almost didn't look, but fear made me. The message was short, almost mocking. "Running only makes it worse." My hands shook as I clutched the phone. She wasn't giving up. She was playing with me like a cat with its prey. And though I had escaped her house, her shadow followed me into every corner of the city. That evening, as the sun sank and the city's lights flickered on, I made a decision. Running without direction would only wear me down. I needed to face this, not by going back, but by learning what she had planned, why she had turned against me. If I understood her game, maybe I could stay one step ahead. My heart raced at the thought, but a strange fire burned in me too. Fear had carried me this far, but now survival demanded more. Demanded courage. As I walked through the crowded streets, blending into the sea of strangers, I promised myself one thing. I would not let her win. Not here, not anywhere. The city had started to feel like a maze, and every turn I took only seemed to lead me deeper into its tangled streets and louder noise. But no matter how far I went, I couldn't escape the feeling that Maria was right behind me, closing in step by step, her words from those text messages echoing in my mind like a curse. Running only makes it worse. By the fourth night, the exhaustion in my bones was almost unbearable, my stomach tight with hunger, and my nerves shredded from constant fear. I hadn't slept properly in days. Every time my eyes closed, I jolted awake at the sound of footsteps or the slam of a car door, convinced she had found me. Still, something inside me had shifted, a thin strand of determination growing stronger each day. If I was ever going to survive this, I needed answers. I needed to know why my own sister, the girl I once trusted with all my secrets, the woman who had once braided my hair and sang me to sleep, had become my greatest enemy. I couldn't live in the shadows of her plans anymore. That thought carried me back to the library, the only place I had found even a shred of safety. I sat in a corner seat, the weak afternoon sunlight spilling across the table, and I forced myself to think. Maria was deliberate, she was calculating, and if she said, "Tomorrow night it will be done," then she had been preparing something specific, something that went beyond just anger or jealousy. The memory of her voice on the phone replayed in my mind, the sharpness of her tone, the way she spoke about me like I was nothing more than a burden. Burden. That was the word that clung to me. Did she see me as someone standing in the way of her life, her money, her peace? Or was there something darker, something I hadn't yet understood? My hands shook as I opened my phone again, the battery already low from being off and on over the past days. More messages waited, but one stood out, sent just hours ago. "It doesn't have to end this way. You can come back and we'll fix it." I stared at the words, my heart pounding. They almost sounded reasonable, almost like she was reaching out, but I knew better. I remembered the ice in her voice that night, the certainty. No text could erase that. Still, the message made one thing clear: she hadn't given up. She was still searching for me. Maybe she even knew I was in the city. The thought made me glance around the library nervously, scanning every face, every movement, certain she would appear at any second. As dusk settled in, I decided to move again, slipping out into the streets where neon signs flickered to life and the crowd thickened with people heading home from work. I blended into them, my bag pressed tightly to my chest, but I couldn't shake the prickle crawling up my neck, that animal sense of being watched. Every reflection in the glass windows of shops seemed to show me more than myself, a shadow lingering just far enough away to stay hidden. My pulse quickened, my feet carrying me faster, until I ducked into a side street, quieter and dimly lit. That was when I heard it, the faintest echo of footsteps behind me, matching my own. I froze, my breath caught in my throat, and for a second I considered running. But then the steps stopped too. Silence stretched between the brick walls, and I turned slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. The alley was empty, at least to my eyes, but the fear rooted me in place. Was I imagining it? Or was she really here, toying with me like she had been through her messages? I backed away until I reached the other end of the alley and spilled out onto a busier street, relief flooding me when the crowd swallowed me whole again. Still, the encounter left me shaken. She was close, closer than ever. That night, unable to calm the storm inside me, I found myself wandering into a church. The heavy wooden doors creaked as I pushed them open, and the air inside was cool and still, smelling faintly of wax and old wood. A few candles flickered near the altar, their light dancing against the stone walls. I slid into one of the back pews, my bag beside me, and let my shoulders sag for the first time in days. For a while I just sat there, staring at the glow of the candles, listening to the quiet. The city noise couldn't reach me here, and for a moment it felt like I had stepped outside of time. I thought about praying, though I wasn't sure who I was praying to or what I should even ask for. Strength maybe, courage, protection, or maybe just the clarity to understand why my life had turned into this nightmare. The silence offered no answers, only the sound of my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. But in that quiet, I realized something important. I couldn't keep waiting for Maria to make the next move. If I stayed reactive, she would win. She was smarter, more prepared, and she had already set things in motion. No, if I wanted to survive, I had to stop running blindly and start finding out the truth. The next morning, I went back to the cafe where I had first sat after arriving in the city. The same barista was there, handing out steaming cups to a line of impatient customers. I bought the cheapest coffee again, but this time I lingered longer, watching the people around me, wondering if any of them had seen her, if she had asked questions about me. The thought of her showing strangers my picture, asking if they had spotted me, sent a fresh wave of dread through me. I sipped slowly, letting the warmth steady me, and then an idea struck me. Maria wasn't just acting out of anger. Her words, "she's draining me," played in my head again. Could this be about money? About inheritance, debts, something I didn't know? We hadn't been close in years. Maybe there were parts of her life she had hidden from me, things that made my presence dangerous for her. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. She hadn't just wanted me gone emotionally. She had wanted me gone completely, erased. That realization filled me with both fear and resolve. If I could find out what she was hiding, maybe I could use it against her. Maybe for the first time I could stop being the hunted and become something more. That night, as I lay curled up in another borrowed corner of the library, my body aching from the hard floors and my mind racing with thoughts, I made myself a promise. I would not let her catch me. I would not let her plan be done. If she wanted me gone, she would have to fight harder, because I wasn't the same frightened girl who had crept out of her house barefoot and trembling. I was changing piece by piece, fear transforming into something sharper. The city had nearly broken me, but it had also taught me that survival wasn't just about running. It was about thinking, about adapting, about fighting back when the time came. Maria thought she knew me, thought she could predict my every move, but she was wrong. She had underestimated me. And now, as I closed my eyes in the dim library light, exhaustion finally pulling me into restless sleep, I felt the faintest spark of something I hadn't felt in days. Power. The night of reckoning arrived sooner than I expected. Though in my heart I had been bracing for it all along, every hour of running, every breathless step through the city, every sleepless night on cold library floors building to this moment where I would finally face Maria, where the questions that had been eating me alive would no longer be whispers in the dark but answers laid bare in the open. And though my body trembled with exhaustion and my mind screamed for me to keep hiding, I knew that ending this nightmare required standing still and looking directly at the sister who had once been my closest friend and was now my greatest enemy. I chose the meeting place carefully, not because she offered it but because I said it myself, a decision that felt powerful, almost defiant after days of reacting to her every move. I sent her a message from a stranger's borrowed phone, my hands shaking as I typed, "If you want me, meet me at the old train station tonight. Come alone." It was a gamble, but one I had to take. I couldn't keep being her prey, couldn't let her hunt me into the ground. The station was half abandoned now, most of its platforms closed and silent, the echo of the past clinging to its broken tiles and flickering lamps, and as I walked through its corridors with the air heavy with rust and dust, my heart thudded painfully against my ribs, my eyes darting to every shadow, my ears straining for the sound of her footsteps. For a while, there was only emptiness, and I almost believed she wouldn't come, almost allowed myself to hope she had given up, but then I saw her. Maria, standing at the far end of the platform, her figure tall and familiar yet chillingly foreign, her dark coat blending into the shadows, her face unreadable as the dim light caught her eyes. She didn't move at first, and neither did I. We stood there staring at each other, years of shared history suspended between us, all the laughter, secrets, and arguments condensed into this silence that threatened to crush me. But then she took a step forward, and her voice, calm and sharp as glass, cut through the air. "You should have stayed away," she said, her words neither angry nor warm, but weighted with a cold certainty that sent shivers racing down my spine. My throat was dry, but I forced the words out. "Why, Maria? Why do you want me gone? What did I ever do to deserve this?" For a flicker of a moment, her face shifted, a flash of something almost human, regret or maybe pain, but it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a mask of bitterness. "You don't understand," she said, her steps measured as she came closer. You were never supposed to come back into my life. You ruined things without even trying. Always taking, always needing. Do you have any idea what I've had to sacrifice because of you?" Her words landed like blows, but instead of knocking me down, they ignited something deep inside me, a spark of anger that had been smoldering beneath the fear. "Sacrifice?" I shot back, my voice shaking but louder now. "I never asked for anything. I trusted you, Maria. I loved you like a sister should. And you plotted against me. You wanted to erase me. For what? Money. Freedom. Your pride." She laughed then, a sharp, brittle sound that echoed off the station walls, and the sound made my stomach twist. "You really don't know, do you?" she said, and now her eyes burned with something darker than hate, envy maybe, or desperation. "It was never about just money. It was about survival. I've carried the weight of both our lives for too long. When you showed up again, needing, demanding, reminding me of everything I had tried to bury, I knew I had to end it. You don't belong here anymore." Her voice rose as she spoke, breaking into something raw, and for the first time, I saw the cracks in her armor, the frantic energy of someone not in full control. She was dangerous, yes, but she was also unraveling, and that realization steadied me. I straightened my shoulders, my fear melting into a quiet strength I hadn't known I possessed. "You're wrong," I told her firmly, the words ringing louder than I expected in the empty station. "I do belong here. I belong to my own life, not yours. You can't erase me, Maria. You can't control me anymore." For a moment, silence fell again, thick and suffocating, and then she lunged. The movement was sudden, violent, her hands reaching for me with all the fury she had kept contained, and instinct took over. I stumbled back, my bag falling to the ground, my breath coming in short gasps as I struggled against her grip. Her nails dug into my skin, her strength fueled by rage, but adrenaline surged through me, and I pushed back with everything I had, the years of fear, of silence, of being overshadowed, all erupting into that single moment of resistance. We crashed against the wall, the sound echoing, and I cried out, twisting, kicking, clawing to free myself. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice breaking. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." The words seemed to shock her, her grip faltering for just a second, and in that sliver of time I shoved her away, my body trembling as she stumbled backward, her face twisted with disbelief and fury. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time, not as the weak girl she thought she could control, but as someone who had broken free of her chains. Breathing hard, I bent down and grabbed my bag, clutching it like a shield, and I took a step back, then another, my eyes never leaving hers. She didn't follow this time, didn't lunge again. She just stood there, her chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, her expression a storm of emotions I couldn't untangle. "This isn't over," she spat finally, her voice hoarse, but it didn't carry the same power it once had. I shook my head slowly, my heart pounding but my voice steady as I replied, "It is for me." Then I turned and walked away, my legs trembling beneath me but carrying me forward with a strength I had never felt before, each step breaking me free from the invisible chains she had wrapped around me. I didn't look back, not even once, though I felt her eyes burning into me, the weight of her presence lingering like a shadow. When I finally stepped out of the station, the cool night air hit my face, and I sucked in a deep breath, the first breath in what felt like forever that wasn't filled with fear. The city stretched before me, vast and alive, and for the first time it didn't feel like a trap, it felt like freedom. My body ached, my heart was bruised, but I was still standing, and more importantly, I was free. I knew Maria wouldn't disappear overnight, that her bitterness and anger might linger, but she no longer had power over me. I had faced her, seen her for what she truly was, and walked away stronger. That was my victory. As I moved through the streets, blending into the crowd once again, I felt something I hadn't dared to believe I could feel since the night I escaped her house. Hope. Hope that I could start over, that my life was still mine to live, that no matter how broken or scarred I felt, I had chosen survival. And with that choice, I had finally closed the door on Maria's plan, on her control, and on the nightmare that had once consumed me. The night sky stretched above me, endless and full of possibility, and as I walked into it, I whispered to myself, "I'm free. letting the words wrap around me like armor, the promise of a new beginning. Backhand Index pointing right. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Backhand Index pointing right. Subscribe to Twisted Fate Chronicle for more thrilling and unforgettable stories.